Today we're discussing how to read like a writer so you can learn more from your reading and apply these lessons to your own stories. I remember back when I was a little kid, and I'm sure this is the same for a lot of you, we laid in bed or on the couch and we would be reading a book for hours on end and maybe even until we finished the book. Back then, story was a complete mystery. It was fascinating but enigmatic. Reading like a writer won't change the enjoyment that you get from the stories that you read, but what it will do is allow you to extract lessons from them that you can apply to your own writing. So if you've ever been interested in learning how to read like a writer, this video will show you how. Let's get into it. What is reading like a writer? Reading like a writer is switching out of this completely entertainment mindset towards story and coming at it from a different perspective with the desire to learn. And this is valuable because it can take an activity that you most certainly already enjoy, reading, and allow you to extract lessons from that you can apply to your own writing. So how can you actually start reading like a writer? The first way is by learning more about writing theory. The reason why this is important is because naturally, as you learn more about writing, you start to notice more when you're reading. Things that you might not have noticed before all of a sudden become visible to you. And this helps you see these techniques in action and gives you references that you can use to learn more about these techniques. You can think of this by picturing a cave. Say that you're in the middle of this dark cave. You've never gone through it before, you don't know where anything leads and how everything connects to one another. And that's where you are when you first start writing. You don't know how all the myriad of these techniques work together. And if you're trying to read like a writer, but not studying the actual writing theory, it's like if you were in the cave and trying to feel around and find your way through and learn what the cave looks like just by feel. In contrast, if you're learning writing theory, it's like turning on a light and being able to see a little more of what's in front of you. And that's why learning about writing theory is valuable, because it allows you to see how all these techniques that writers use are connected and how you can use them together to craft your stories. The next way you can learn to read like a writer is by taking notes when you're writing. A lot of people like annotating directly on books, but personal preference for me is that I just like taking notes on my computer. I don't have to use paper and I don't have to mark up an actual book. Whatever your taste is. The point is to pay attention while you're reading and take note of things that are interesting and that stand out to you. It's easy to go a little bit too far with this taking notes thing, and you can find yourself writing down more than you're actually reading. So if I were you, I would just focus on writing down specific moments. Pay attention to the moments that stand out to you for being exceptionally good or that just didn't seem right. Note down those moments so that you can return to them later and find out why this happened. Which leads us right to the next way you can read like a writer. Analyze specific moments and scenes and elements of story that you either liked or didn't like. And by paying attention to the elements that you had some emotional, visceral reaction to, you'll feel more motivated to actually do the deep digging that you're going to need to do. When you're doing this process, you might want to ask yourself, what about this worked or didn't work? Why did it work or not? What was the writer trying to achieve here, and how did they achieve or fail to achieve that objective? And this is the time to go into really fine-grained detail and break apart what's going on. Look at all the small elements like sentence structure and word choice and rhythm and all the various things that are making up this section of text. Next, make sure to smash that like button if you're enjoying this video so that YouTube knows to share it with other writers like you. The next way to read like a writer is to read widely and then narrow down. This is actually touching on a topic that I feel like I've talked about a few times already, which is focusing on a specific genre. So I might have to make a video about that. Let me know if you want to see that. With that out of the way, what are the benefits of doing both of these things? First, by reading widely, you can figure out what's going on overall in fiction right now. What's going on across genres, and what can you take from one genre and apply it to your genre in a new way that feels original. By contrast, reading narrowly can help you understand exactly what's already going on in your genre. What things are being used repeatedly that readers still seem to enjoy and that you enjoy as a reader when you read? What things are being used constantly that you think are a little overdone and you want to avoid using? Making sure that you're reading both wide and narrowly can help you get the best of both worlds from your practice of reading like a writer. Next, focus on specific techniques. And this ties back to our first point of understanding writing theory. The process could look something like this. You decide that you want to work on a specific technique. Maybe you feel like your dialogue is just too on the nose and you really want to learn how to incorporate more subtext into your dialogue. So you go and you research and you read a bunch of stuff about writing better dialogue. And then while you're reading, you can start looking for these things in the dialogue and gather examples of good dialogue that you would like to use and replicate. Then you can focus specifically on this dialogue and pick apart why it worked. And once you understand the mechanics of these dialogue sections, you can refer back to them while you're working on your actual project and make sure that your writing is doing some of the same things that's being done in these passages. Another thing you could do to try to focus on specific tactics is look for books or authors that are famous for the things that you're struggling with. And by focusing on these specific works and authors, you'll be able to find great examples that you can dive into and analyze, and then add to your list of passages to emulate in your own writing. Next, make sure you're not trying to do all your analysis in just one read through. This ties back to our second point of taking notes and how you can kind of go overboard. You want to make sure that you're just focusing on the high level while you're reading through the first time, and then when you come through the second time, you can focus on specific things because you don't have to pay attention to what's going on in the story as much. You already know what's going on in the story, so you have all this brain space to focus on the specific aspects of the writing. And the last thing to keep in mind when you're reading like a writer is to remember the truth of yet. When we're looking at these extremely polished, finished works by these great authors, works that leave us in awe, it can be easy to feel overwhelmed, to feel like your own writing is not good enough. And that's why it's important to remember the truth of yet. Because maybe your writing isn't good enough yet, but that doesn't mean that it has to stay that way forever. It just means that it's not good enough right now. It's not good enough yet. That writer that you're admiring, that you're looking up to, whose work leaves you in awe, they started off in a very similar place to you right now. They didn't like their writing at one point, I'm sure of it. You can guarantee it. I mean, little kids don't come out the womb writing perfect stories. They were in that same position at one point, where they were scared to share their stories with other people, where they didn't know what to do to make their stories better, where they felt like they were never going to be as good as they ended up getting to. And when you're looking at these other writers and seeing their polished, almost perfect work that seems effortless, realize that just because you aren't there yet doesn't mean that you can't get there. And that's the point of reading like a writer. You can look at their writing, you can understand what makes it work, and learn to take these components and use them in your own writing and improve. And that's what this channel is all about: improvement, growth, mastery. And reading like a writer is an effective tool for growth, but only if you don't let it get you down. So even when you're reading some impressive writing that leaves you in awe, remember the truth of yet. Remember that that writer started off writing disorganized and ineffective writing too. And if they were able to get from the place they started at to the place that they are now, then you can learn to do the same. And if you want to see reading like a writer in action, I have a video where I'm breaking down 3 moments from 3 different books. And to see that, click here. As a child, I used to make pretentious faces at the camera. Truth or lie? Tell me if you know who the heck that is.